Hey, everybody, it's Doug Green, and I'm the publisher of Technology Reseller News. And I'm very happy to introduce Matt Putra, CEO and founder of Eightx. Matt, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, this is our first time talking to you. You do some very interesting things. It says you're fractional CFO. What does that mean?
Well, I used to work as a full-time CFO in a corporate group, and corporate sucks. And so I left that job, and now I'm working part-time for a number of companies around the world. And I have other people on my team that are CFOs for smaller companies in Australia, USA, Canada, Netherlands, UK, all over the place.
And what does that mean? In other words, you buy the amount of CFOing that you need to get. Is that how it works?
That's exactly correct. So we have some clients that are doing 100 million, and we have clients that are doing 1 million. And the 100 million people, they buy a lot more than the $1 million people. But when you're at 1 million, we will help you with cash flow, forecasting, inventory buying, setting your budgets, communicating with your staff, basically help you grow your company and keep profitability going.
How this may sound strange question, but let's just sort of establish the value of having a CFO to begin with.
Sure.
So let me ask it this way. Do you notice in the work you do in, let's say, software development amongst MSPs, channels, resellers, et cetera, companies that maybe even someone's labeled the CFO, but that person really isn't. They're really doing bookkeeping or accounting. Sure. What do you see?
Well, I think that there is value in the reporting, and there is value in looking backwards, right? What I tend to see when you only have that is that people are aware of where they've been, but there's not a strong sense of how to get to the next stage. There's a lot of ideas. We think it'll cost this. We think the returns will be that. But I think when someone has somebody forward-looking and strategic, what I do see is an integration of many different points of view and mapping that onto a spreadsheet to the dollars and cents going forward. Then what happens is you take the actions, or you do the projects that you were thinking about, and you can look back at what you thought would work, and you can kind of find the discrepancies. Where did it not work? Where did it work? And you end up making better decisions, better and better decisions over time.
And the advantage of going with what you're offering versus, let's say, running out there and hiring a CFO is I'm getting what I need, as opposed to sort of this very large structured operational cost. Is that what's happening?
Well, yeah. I mean, you're at the low side. Your CFO is going to cost you very low side, 150,000, maybe 200 at the absolute minimum, right?
Right.
For the average company that's doing, let's say 20 million a year, we would be probably less than half that, or around half of that number. And they're going to get all the most important stuff that a CFO would do anyway. And we're just not going to do some of the things they would do. We'll expect a controller to do the compliance and some of these things, right? And as we all would know from, right, the average person isn't effective 40 hours a week, right? Well, I don't know what the number is, but it's 70% or less. When you work with a fractional, we're on for you whatever hours a week we're on, and then we're off. Whereas you're not paying us to sit around and be off or take lunches or this or that other thing. Some people do need a full-time person, but most of the time you can get by with a fractional. And I would say, we even have a client that's $100 million a year. We work for them. One of us works 2 days a week. The other works 3 days a week. So they have a lot of time, but we're still just over half of what they paid their outbound CFO. And they're getting fantastic results.
Matt, I do think that the word passion is way overused in our world, but I can hear it in your voice that that since you liberated yourself from the corporate world and the commute and all that went with it, the dry cleaning and whatnot, you're really, it sounds like you're more connected. You're more powered up for what you're doing.
I love what I do. It's funny you mentioned the dry cleaning. I don't do any dry cleaning anymore. That's really funny. Right. The only person that said that. I love what I will do. What I'm doing now forever. I would just do less of it when I don't need money anymore. But I love what I do. I love the consulting aspect. I love working at a high level. And I love the part of the business where I work with a few clients in this industry. And so when a new one joins, I can help them benchmark what looks good, what seems off, what are other people doing, and we can kind of have a merging of the minds from people in different clients in different industries, and kind of think better overall.
You talk a lot on your materials online there about financial clarity. What does that even mean?
Okay, so it means a couple things. One is it means you know how you're doing right now. Like you go for a physical at the doctor says blood pressure is this, heart rate's this, cholesterol's that. You need that regularly as a business. Monthly is the absolute minimum, I would say. And so you get that financial clarity. You know how healthy you are, what problems you have, how you're doing. Okay, really important. The other part of clarity is looking forward. How might you do if? How will you do when? If the economy, there's an issue, how will that affect you? And so it's both, how are you doing now? How will you do? And beyond just the, let's say, blood pressure. Your blood pressure is not great. Here's why. You haven't run in a while, your diet needs adjustment, try this, vitamins, this maybe is a medication. On a financial level, your gross margins are suffering. Well, let's break it down. You have 800 SKUs. The bottom 20% are actually diluting your gross margin. Let's address those. Your top ones are adding more value than even the middle ones. So how do we sell more of those? Your best customers buy this much from you. Your worst customers are destroying value. And so we will go multiple layers deep to help you understand how you're doing. And when I say financial clarity, that's the pinnacle. How are you doing? Understanding all the levels, and then how will you do if?
And it sounds like in that process, you're uncovering opportunities, you're reallocating resources, etc.
So I had a call on Tuesday, and I was working with a client through their monthly report. Most of these meetings are boring. 8 out of 10 monthly meetings are going to be yawn fests, but you attend them, and here's why. I looked at their marketing efficiency, and I said, this to me seems more efficient than it's supposed to be. It's not what we planned on. It's not what I thought would happen. So let's look at it. So we opened up the screen. We looked marketing here. We looked at their attribution, and we looked at their spend per channel. And what we noticed is their new customer acquisition dropped by 36%. Now, if you know anything about marketing right now, new customer acquisition is only going up. So to have theirs drop 36% is a massive thing. Nobody in the company noticed but me. And they're not massive, they're 50, 60 people, but nobody noticed but me. So we dove into it, figured out what led to that, and now we know how to replicate the effect again. And so 8 out of 10 meetings with this client are really boring, but this one I will have paid for myself for the next year or 2 years, because we figured out how do we replicate that again and again and again. We know how to do it.
So, a lot of companies that we report to are in the early stages of taking off, of rolling out a product. What are the mistakes you often see?
Yeah. When you're growing, I would say there are demands coming at you from all angles. And so you want to spend your time on the most impactful tasks, projects that you can, that are going to grow the most, create the most value. And I would say one of the big mistakes is that there's a drop off in discipline on the financials, meaning in a busy period, in a launch or in a new market expansion or new geo or whatever, I find that a lot of people spend less time with their CFO or their financial team than they should, because there is legitimately a lot going on. However, like I mentioned, 8 out of 10 meetings are going to be a waste of your time. You're going to leave that meeting going, I wish I did not do that. But you have to do it, because 2 out of the 10 times there's either a lightning bolt or we find a major risk that we didn't know about. And so especially during these busy times is when you should be checking in, maybe even more regularly. And the trouble is that it's just that boring stuff that you have to do. But if you do it, you will mitigate risk. You will find opportunity. So that's probably the biggest one. And the second one is, I mean, in any new growth, I think you almost never hit the forecasts you want. So aggressive forecasting and not understanding how difficult either a launch or a geo might be. In almost every case, launches tend to underperform if they're big enough. And so having downside planning is one that I don't see enough. If this does 20% or 50% of what we thought it would, or 80% what we thought it would, what happens? Conversely, if it does 120% or 140%, that can also cause a problem. So having upside and downside plans is another thing I don't see enough of.
So Matt, it sounds like you take a very proactive role with your clients. No matter what you're doing right now, it probably you might be wondering, is the economic uncertainty we seem to be rolling through going to impact me? So how are you helping your clients navigate through all that?
Yeah, cool question. So one of our clients, they source a lot from Asia, of course, and Latin America. And we tried to quantify the impact of the tariffs on their bottom line. We think it's about 500K or so. And
Wow.
so we said, yeah, it's not awesome. And so we said, what if we can get not just 500K, but what if we use this as an opportunity or an inflection point to double down and do better as a business operationally? And so what we've done is we've created the 10% challenge with their team. And we had a brainstorming session where we had the whole team on the phone, Google or whatever, and we got 3 to 5 ideas for either reduction in costs or increased revenues. We put them all on a sheet, and now we are asking people to pick 3 and just start right now. With the rest of them, try to quantify by how much you can cut cost or increase revenue, and then we ask them, everybody come up with 2 impossible ideas, right? Things that we can't execute today. We wouldn't be possible. And the ideas that we got out of that were incredible. And most of them are doable. And so what we're doing is we're engaging the whole team in this process. We've told them we're not going to make any headcount reductions right now. And we have a tracker. So when you finish your project, you track it, and there's a leaderboard to 500K basically. And so right now we're at only 80, but it's the first week. And that's one of the ways we've engaged teams on that. Yeah.
So, throughout the year, the last 12 months, merger and acquisition podcasts are basically one of our top, no matter what's going on with AI, no matter what's going on with all the different technologies, our readers want to listen to M&A news.
Mm-hmm.
What's some advice that you have for people that are maybe thinking about eventually selling their company or getting ready to do that?
Yeah, the biggest one is, if you're thinking of selling, begin the process, quote unquote, 2 years early. So by process, I mean get ready for it. So engage an investment banker, or even just have a few conversations 2 years before you think you might want to sell, because they're going to go, oh, I've seen this in your market. This was a value detractor. This was a value addition, and you can find the kind of the points where people who might buy your company would not like it, or they will like it. And so you can begin to fix things they wouldn't like, add things they would like. By way of example, if you are a very engaged founder or CEO, owner, right? Do you want to stay on for 3 more years after the acquisition? And if you don't, you better build a team that can run the business for you and have operational patterns where the acquired thinks that they're not going to need you. You also should do proper accrual-based accounting for 2 years before they buy you. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of work rearranging your financials in a way that makes sense. The big one is just start early. Start early. I would say hire a fractional CFO or a CFO if you're in. Keep yours if you already have one. Engage a banker early. Engage a lawyer early. Just have some introductory conversations about, again, value detractors, value adders, and start chipping away at those.
Matt, we have, I think you've touched upon it in one of the scenarios you just discussed a little while ago, but you talk about scenario modeling. What is that?
Scenario modeling is at its core, you have to know that any one forecast you make is wrong. Always. The one you make is wrong. So what you do is you try to capture reality between inside of 3 forecasts. So you have one that you think is the average expectation. You have one that's like, what if things go really well? And then you have one which is, what if things go really bad? And you can make sure reality is caught between those 3, such that you have plans made in advance between the 3. And if reality ends up being in the worst case, you already know what you're going to do. If reality ends up being the best case, you already know what you might do. And that's the essence of scenario planning.
You know, Matt, as we wrap up our podcast today, I strongly suspect that among our many readers and listeners, especially the guys that are doing development and other work, they're going to say, yeah, that's great. This is exciting, but I can't afford this. And I'm in a bit of a rut. I've got no revenue coming in. I'm struggling to get new sales. And you're sort of just somersaulting.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing you do when you're stuck, you feel stuck, is I say addition by deletion. First, delete the things you hate, the products that don't work, the people on your team that aren't awesome, the customers you don't like. Start there. If you start there, I think you will begin to get your energy back, get your mojo back, and then you can continue growing in the right direction.
Very interesting advice. Well, Matt, this has been a great first podcast with you. We've gotten just a little taste. I hope we get to do more of these. But where can we learn more about Eightx?
Yeah, my website is www.eightx.co. I'm also on LinkedIn, Matt Putra, and I'm also on Twitter as the e-commerce CFO.
All right. Well, Matt, the starting of a great conversation. I hope everyone pays a little bit of attention to this, take a look at the website. There's lots there. Matt, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks, Doug. This was awesome.